Callaghan.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I speak in support of the motion, and I, for one, would also welcome, or I also appreciate the presence of the Minister for Health here and the contributions to the debate from the Chair of the Education Committee and also from the Chair of the Employment and Learning Committee, because, as many speakers have said, this is not a single department provision. And I think one of the main purposes of the bill is to try and break a silo mentality which has apparently afflicted autism service provision over many, many years across this region. Unfortunately, when I attended the Health Committee meeting last week and having read the submission from the Department, the Health Department and possibly other departments' positions on this seems to come across as an "it'll be all right on the night" type of attitude. Now, as Mary Byrne and Anne Widdicombe both found out on Sunday night, it won't always be all right on the night, and unfortunately for many families of people with autism and for children and adults with autism across Northern Ireland, it hasn't been all right on the night for many nights and many days over very many years, and that's why I would commend my colleague Dominic Bradley and other people in the all-party group for putting so much work into this bill, and Dominic for bringing it before the House. The experience of many people with autism and other conditions across the ASD spectrum and their families has unfortunately been that services are disjointed, outcomes are dependent on where they live or what staff are available at a particular point in time or in a particular place, and strategies have been discretionary. I think the purpose of this bill is to replace the begging bowl and the busking hat which families have had to go around with from statutory agency to statutory agency with a statutory guarantee. And I think it's useful that the party reflects on a point already made by other speakers about the intervention in Westminster last year. While all of the provisions of the statute are not identical, Westminster evidently took the position that it wouldn't always be all right on the night either. And I think this House should bear in mind that consideration and steps being taken forward in Scotland as well, because we have to move to a position where people with autism and their families are not seen as a burden in our society, but are seen as an asset to it and to our society, and that we emancipate that potential in the legislation of the region. As I've already said, I view this bill as a silo-busting provision. I've been contacted by a number of constituents in the Western Trust area since I took my place in this House in anticipation of this bill coming through, and particularly since I was appointed to the Health Committee. And the message coming across from many of them is that services are fractured and that they would like something to be done about it. I know that people on the benches across have referred on numerous occasions to cost, as have some other members of the House. The message that I'm getting from families and indeed from some of the frontline workers involved in service provision is that, in actual fact, very often there is duplication of services, there is poor coordination between services. Frontline workers themselves, who are highly specialised and highly trained people, are frustrated that they find it difficult to coordinate between different agencies working with people with autism. So, in many ways, this bill should actually release some funds through better coordination and cooperation and through reducing duplication of services. I've been told that in the Western Trust, on the Education and Library Board side of the House, as it were, you've got a dedicated autism team and a communications team which also deals with children with autism. On the Western Trust side of the House, we've got the Learning Disability team, which I understand takes the lead in many cases, and then we've got speech and language inputs and whatnot else. Some of these services, I'm told by families and by some of the workers, don't communicate well, and in some cases, some uptake of one service can actually preclude a child or an adult from access to another service, and that's clearly something which should be a matter of concern to this House and a reason for supporting a bill such as this. I'd actually, Mr Deputy Speaker, like to read out a couple of sentences just from an email which I received from a frontline services worker in autism in the statutory sector. And she said, "There are so many teams out there that no one knows what the other is doing. It's very frustrating, especially for us on the ground, but more frustrating for the families, given the volumes of appointments they have to attend. Services for anyone on the spectrum are disjointed. The greatest loser is the child." I think, Mr Deputy Speaker, this bill will certainly go a long way to helping to deliver more coordinated and better planned provision across the region to hopefully do away with some of the concerns which that worker has expressed, and I certainly hope so. As I said, Mr Deputy Speaker, we need more joined-up thinking, and it seems to me that the silo mentality actually radiates from the very top here. At the committee meeting last week, we received a briefing from departmental officials, and this is not, Mr Deputy Speaker, to be taken as criticism of the department, but I think it's an accurate reflection of the state of play at this point in time, where in the briefing we are told that the Department of Education is well advanced in producing a detailed autism strategy. So that's in the briefing from the Department of Health to the Health Committee of this House. When the matter was pressed at the Health Committee, it was fairly apparent to us that the Department of Education officials hadn't been coordinating with the Department of Health officials in their preparation of their strategy at this stage. And while one department or the other department could say that that's fair enough and that there are no rules being broken, the fact is that this bill would provide that there would be one statutorily based strategy for the Northern Ireland region, and that all of the departments would have a statutory duty to coordinate in the development of that strategy for the entire region. So we would have better planning of services where different departments are inputting from the very get-go, and the different pieces of the jigsaw, to use an analogy from the other part of the House, would be put together earlier on in the process, which would, ipso facto, in my opinion, Mr Deputy Speaker, lead to better outcomes on the ground. So, Mr Deputy Speaker, I think it's important that we, as an Assembly, that the House considers its overarching responsibility to bring together the different agencies and their efforts so that we get better outcomes and better planning. And that's why I would reinforce once again that this isn't a health issue alone and shouldn't be seen as a health issue alone. And I certainly hope that we'll receive briefings and inputs from officials from other departments than solely the Department of the Minister present here tonight. In conclusion, Mr Deputy Speaker, I would say that the history of autism services in this region far too often has been one of promises not delivered. And that is why I think that it is incumbent on every member of this House, I think, to vote for this bill if they want to guarantee services rather than potentially risk replication of the delays, distress and disappointments which too many families have experienced in the past. If devolution is to make a difference to people, we need to break that cycle and bring about better delivery, because there has been a history, Mr Deputy Speaker, of should-have-beens. It seems that at present one department is now presenting us with a promise of maybes, but what we actually need to deliver for families out there on the ground is a future of will-be's. And that is why I, for one, Mr Deputy Speaker, will be voting for this bill today.
Call the Minister of Health, Social Service and Public Safety, Mr Michael McGimpsey, to respond. Mr McGimpsey.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker.